This is Financially Fit Radio with Corey Sickles from Safe Harbor Retirement Group. When a part of your financial strategy is out of tune, your long-term goals, your retirement savings, and your legacy can all suffer. With many years of experience in the financial industry, Corey provides his clients and prospects with the information they need regarding Social Security, retirement income planning, wealth management, and much more. Listen in as we address your financial concerns and provide helpful solutions to put you on the path to achieving your retirement goals. And now, here is Financially Fit Radio with Corey Sickles.
Hello and welcome back to Financially Fit Radio. My name is Corey Sickles from Safe Harbor Retirement Group and Wealth Advisors. If you would like more information about what you hear during our show today, just give us a call at 614-760-0670 or visit us online at safeharboroh.com. And while you're on our website, click on that radio page. You can check out some past shows and subscribe to our program on Apple Podcast, Amazon Music, Google Podcast, or Spotify. Also, feel free to visit our YouTube page by typing in Safe Harbor Retirement Group to watch videos on different financial topics. And please don't hesitate to reach out to us if you have questions or if you want to set up a face-to-face or virtual meeting. And remember, all meetings are complimentary with no obligation. Well, today we're going to talk about some retirement tips. And really what we're going to focus on today is if you're that between those ages of 50 and 64. Next week, we're going to kind of talk about if you're over 65. But I think I think there's going to be some good tips in here. Just for a lot of our listeners out there that are, between those ages. I mean, your main goal is to retire here probably, within 10 to 15 years. And you're going to want to make sure that you have your financial plan in place. So we'll talk about some tips that's going to help you make sure you keep on track to have that retirement that you want. But before we kind of dive into that, let me introduce to you my co-host this week and every week, and that's Tony Shore. Tony, how are you today?
I am doing good, Corey. Thanks for having me on the show. And this sounds like an important topic, right in my wheelhouse. I fit that age category, so I'm looking forward to some of these tips. But yeah, I'm doing good. A little stiff today, I was telling you, a little sore because I helped my son move, him and his wife. So I had to carry some furniture up some stairs, some boxes. And I wasn't on the packing end, but I was on the unloading end of this trip. And I wasn't there to tell them not to pack the boxes full of heavy items.
Sure.
They had some boxes that weren't that big, but it took two people to carry them because they had them packed full. So,
well, you know what? They'll live and learn on that one for the next time they do move, right?
Yeah. So how have you been? What have you been up to, Corey?
Been good. Just got back from Nashville. And
Nash Vegas.
That's exactly right. I went down there to visit a friend, play a little bit of golf down there, had a nice weekend. And it's hard, it's really hard to believe though. I mean, we're already sitting here in the middle of May. It seems like this year's just flying by. And it's when you start planning for retirement, Tony, it kind of flies by. If you know what I mean by that. I mean, one seems like one time you're age 40, the next thing you know, you're 50. And, retirement's just right around the corner. So, what I really kind of want to do today is just kind of take our time today and kind of focus on if you're between those ages of 50 or 64, what things should you really be doing now in order to make sure that you're going to have that, a successful retirement. We all want to retire early. But more importantly, you always want to retire knowing that you have a plan in place as well as you have enough money where you're not going to be able to outlive it as well.
Yeah. And that's exactly right. I mean, now that my wife and I are both in our 50s and cruising through our 50s at light speed, as you say, time flies, especially the older you get. We want to make sure we're not missing out on anything we should be doing. And I think a lot of people out there listening have 401ks or IRAs, and they have their jobs. So they're just continuing. Oh, I'm not going to retire for another 10 years. I'm just going to keep going here and not worry about it, or 13 years. And that's not good because they get complacent. And then all of a sudden they're there and there's things they should have been doing, right? That's why this show is so important.
That's exactly right. It's just like anything. You want to put a plan in place. And, for a lot of our listeners out there, if you don't have a financial advisor, I'd highly recommend that you work with an advisor, especially if you're in your 50s. I mean, I think you always should have one just to make sure they can get you started and keep on track. But, now you're really down into that, you only have 10 or 15 years before you're going to retire. And you just need to make sure that you understand what it's going to look like for you. You're going to want to work with an advisor that has a fiduciary obligation, which means they're only going to recommend things in your best interest. But, the earlier that you plan, the easier it's going to be to make sure that you're going to be able to meet your target of income when that day, officially does come to fruition. So, and I think one of the first things that you really should start with, we talked about the advisor, but when you actually meet with your advisor, one of the things you really should do is kind of add details of what your goals and dreams are for retirement. Do you want to retire? Do you want to move? How old are your kids? Because, are you going to spend money, spend time with your grandkids? Are they in the same state? Are they out of state? I mean, there's a lot of things that you need to tell your advisor, because if you do want to travel or if you do want to move out of state, that could have an impact on your savings. And you just need to make sure that that advisor knows really what your ideal retirement's going to look like, when you officially do retire.
Yeah, exactly. And to have an idea of what it's going to look like and to have a written plan, that's key. And that's the first step. And how you get that plan is by working with an independent fiduciary, a financial advisor who's going to look out for your best interests and does retirement planning. And that's what you do for your clients. And like I always say, Corey, most of us are just going to retire once, right? We're just going to retire once. But you retire every day. You go through this process every day with people who come in to meet with you and talk with you. You're constantly in this process with people. So the pitfalls to look out for and what they should be doing, right?
That's exactly right. I mean, yeah, you are right. For our listeners out there, you do only retire once, but we have, hundreds of clients that we're actually working with, and they're all going to retire one day.
Yeah.
It's not, usually I have a client retiring once a month at least. And, multiple times as you kind of, just as we kind of go through that. So we're putting together all these plans for them. And, when you work with an advisor, one of the things we're able to do for you is be able to give you that financial plan. We have what we call our compass report that's going to show where you are financially today. And it's going to be able to show you what it's going to look like 10, 15, 20, 30 years from now, not only from an income standpoint, but from how much money you still have remaining in your account balance as well. And by going through that process, you're going to find out, how much money do you truly need to be able to save over these last 10 to 15 years. Once you reach the age of 50, you have that ability to do what they call catch up. Into your retirement accounts, which means you can actually put more money in there than you did, before the age of 50. And I always recommend, you want to save as much as possible. Of course, the earlier that you do it, the less you actually have to save. But if you're in a position, and I see this all the time, people in their 50s, right? Kids are finally out of school. Maybe you're finally done paying for everything that they, paying for college, for food. Maybe they've been living with you. Hopefully now they're out. They're on their own. And now you can really focus on yourself. And it's so important to be able to throw as much money that you can into your retirement accounts. And you also want to make sure that you're doing it the right way, Tony. And we talk about this all the time. You don't want to put everything necessarily flat out into your 401k either, right? Because as we always talk about, yes, you get a tax reduction today, but you're going to have to pay taxes on that for as long as you live, and you keep taking money out of that. So you want to be efficient with it. And if your company offers a Roth 401k, load up on that, because it's a lot easier, to create budgets when you don't have to worry about what the tax consequences are going to be when you take those withdrawals out.
Yeah, and you mentioned another thing there that people need to look out for, and that's taxes. Taxes on your retirement income. A lot of people think, well, I'm not going to have many taxes in retirement, but there's a good chance you will. and they don't realize your Social Security can be taxed. Most of your retirement accounts are probably taxable, all the money you take out to live on. So you have to be aware of these things.
That's correct. And, one of the other things when you start building income plans, in general, you're probably going to have to make anywhere from about 70 to 80% of what you earn today to have the same type of spending power in retirement. And in most cases, when you start looking at that, you're not going to probably drop down into a different tax bracket. So a lot of people say,
Right.
well, I'm going to pay lower taxes, when I do retire. And I see it more likely than not that you're paying the same amount of taxes. So, and here's the big question, is the 12% tax bracket going to be a 12% tax bracket 15 or 20 years from now?
That's true.
My answer is
probably going to go up.
My answer is probably not. It's probably no, and it's probably not going to be less. You're exactly right.
Yeah.
We're spending a lot of money. We have a lot more baby boomers retiring. There's a lot more cost. They're going to have to raise taxes on certain things, and you want to make sure that not only do you have enough savings, but you also are saving the correct way. And again, an advisor is going to be able to help and guide you through that as well.
Yeah. Yeah, you need that guidance. There's no reason to go it alone, and there are so many things you need to look at. You need to make sure you're taking advantage of those catch-up contributions you mentioned. That's a big tip for people who are 50 and older, isn't it?
It is.
Yeah.
Yep. You always want to be able to save as much as you can, but this might be this might be the time where you really have to double down on what you're saving, to make sure that you have enough money in retirement. And another thing that I think a lot of people really need to consider too is this is a great time to maybe look at consolidating maybe some of your multiple retirement accounts. Over the last 20, 30 years you've been working, you might have, I don't know, 3, 5, or 10 retirement accounts or 401k accounts that are kind of everywhere. And this might be a good time to consolidate because, when you have them everywhere, then you really don't have a good plan on how to invest that money. But if you actually roll those over into your personal IRA or to your personal Roth IRA, then you're going to be able to choose on how you want to invest that. An advisor is going to have a little bit more control with that as well to make sure that they're actually investing to meet your retirement goals as well. And this is one thing I think is going to get probably a little bit worse because I think, the next generation, outside the Gen X and the baby boomers, people are bouncing around a lot more, with their jobs as well too.
Yeah, they are.
Which means a lot of times you're just creating, another 401k plan, and you need to be able to take care of that as well.
Yeah, that's a good point. Boy, I was guilty of having multiple 401ks, and you told me that's a no-no. You need to make sure that you are in control of those accounts. Don't leave old 401ks at old employers. You might lose track of it. It's not being actively managed. You don't know what's going on with it. So that's huge.
It is huge. The DOL, as part of the Secure Act 2.0, Tony, is going to end up having to create a database for individuals to be able to go in to see where all their 401k accounts are. Because I am amazed sometimes on how many people do forget about 401ks they do have. And let's face it, maybe you move and they lose your address and you just don't keep up to date with it, which is more why you want to be able to roll that into your own personal IRA. And let's just say, Tony, you have 3 or 5 different types of 401ks out there. Each of those companies have different investment options, right? And the employer chooses on what that is, what those investment options are. So in a lot of times, I'm not saying they're bad investment choices, but they're also looking at low cost type of things that's going to cost them less money as well, which is why you see every 3, 4, 5 years, if you work for a company, you go from company A to company B, you're on Fidelity today, T. Rowe Price 3 or 4 years from now, Principal 4 or 5 years from there. So these companies are going to switch 401k custodians as well, which is why it's so important. Just take control of it, work with your advisor, and get those into the accounts that you want to.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Something I hadn't thought of is, you want to make sure you're in control, and that's why maybe you want to roll that money over into an IRA and have a financial advisor like yourself who knows your own personal situation, find the best place for your money and
Yes.
where it's going to do what you need it to be doing, whether that's growth, risk, safety, what have you. That is so critical.
That's exactly right. It is critical. And of course, one of the biggest the biggest expense in retirement is potentially a mortgage. And hopefully for a lot of the people that are in this 50 to 64 age range, you're going to be able to get that house paid off by the time you retire. But the one constant that's always going to be there, and that's going to be your healthcare costs. So, if your companies offer some type of HSA, a health savings account that you can put money into, I highly recommend that you do that. A lot of times you can invest it. It's going to grow tax-free, and as long as you use it for medical expenses later on, or even today or later on in retirement, it's going to come back to you tax-free. You can read all kind of numbers. We know healthcare costs are going to be going up, whether it's Medicare Part B premiums or supplement cost or just healthcare in general is going to be going up. And the whole point of it is when you do retire, you are going to have healthcare costs without a doubt. If you don't have them when you're 65, you're going to have them later on in life, right? So you want to be able to make sure that you're in a situation where, you are trying to save, for healthcare. And the best way to be able to do that is with a HSA type of program.
Yeah. And that's another great tool, an HSA. You can really utilize that. That's a great tip right there. Let our listeners know how they can get a hold of you.
Yeah, no problem, Tony. For our listeners out there, if you'd like to schedule a complimentary no obligation meeting with us, just give us a call at 614-760-0670, or you can always visit our website at safeharboroh.com to schedule that complimentary no obligation meeting, with us. One of the goals that we're going to be able to do is sit down with you and review your financial plan if you have one. There's nothing better than getting a second opinion to make sure that you're on track. If you don't have one, we'll put one in place for you. It's so important to have a financial plan to make sure that you're going to have the retirement that you really dream of. And the best way to do that is to schedule a complimentary no obligation meeting with us. Again, just give us a call at 614-760-0670 or visit us online at safeharboroh.com.
We ended the last segment talking a bit about what you can do to make sure you're able to manage your healthcare costs. And you brought up an HSA account, and that is a great way, a great place to put away money tax-free to cover medical costs. And that HSA stays with you after you retire. So you can use that money even after you retire, can't you?
Yes, you can. And let's face it, we know you're going to use it. Right?
Yeah.
You are going to use it in retirement. And, so since we're talking about healthcare, Tony, of course, the other big one that everyone's always worried about, which really can deplete your retirement savings, and that's long-term care, right? You can go out anywhere, stat-wise, whether it's 70% of Americans who reach age 65 are going to need some type of long-term health care, even if it's 50%. Odds are, if you're married, one of you is probably going to need some type of long-term health care. And there's so many solutions out there today. But the one thing I will say is, today is the cheapest that you're ever going to get it. Whatever age you are today is the cheapest that you're ever going to get it.
Yeah.
And, we look at things that, there's some out there that can, we look at those type of programs that if you don't use it, if you don't use it, lose it, right? Type of long-term care. So normally when the plans that we put in place anymore is if you have a death benefit if you don't use it, so at least someone's going to be able to benefit from that death benefit. Of course, you can use it for long-term care, and in some cases we're also it can build cash value, which means you could also use it for retirement income as well. So there's a lot of different life insurance policies out there that we can kind of tailor to meet whatever needs that you're going to have. But let's face it, if you're in memory care today, it's somewhere around $10,000 to $12,000 a month. If you go into assisted living in the Columbus area, it's probably between $4,000 to $5,000 a month. And let's, if 5 or 10 or 20 years from now, this costs are probably going to be double.
Yeah.
Right. So
yeah, it's outrageous.
Right. So you want to talk about something that can make you really go through your retirement savings account, and that's going to be long-term care if you have to go actually pay for that. So again, I'd highly recommend schedule a complimentary meeting with us. We can sit down and go over some different types of options that are going to be available for you or you and your spouse to be able to have some type of protection. You necessarily don't want to protect 100% of what that cost is, but you want to have a big portion of that to be able to be paid for, so you just don't deplete your retirement savings account as well.
Yeah. And like you say, I mean, the days of purchasing just long-term care insurance that will cover all of it if you need long-term care, that doesn't exist, or is not, it's cost prohibitive, so to speak.
Right.
So it's hard to cover, a $12,000 a month expense. And so if you need memory care or something, but there are a lot of strategies now and a lot of new tools and vehicles. Insurance companies have gotten better at this. It's gotten more competitive because this is a concern. And so you can utilize life insurance, or if you have an annuity, certain annuities will allow you to have a long-term care option on there where it'll kick in and pay you more if you go into long-term care to help cover those costs, right?
That's exactly right. I mean, there's so many options that we have, Tony, to be able to not only create income for you in retirement, but also to be able to help you with your long-term care costs if they do arise as well. And of course, the one thing I think this is the time that you really need to sit down with an advisor on an annual basis, and that's you need to start really evaluating or reevaluating on how you are truly investing your funds, right? When you're in your 30s and 40s, you're probably a lot more riskier. But as you are, age, and as you get closer to retirement, or if you are retired, you're going to become a little bit more conservative. It's not so much about growing your accounts as maintaining your accounts.
Right.
And the other part of that is to make sure that you have your income coming in. Now when you're in your 50s, does it make sense to maybe look at having a portion of your assets go into an annuity to create your own pension? So you're going to have that guaranteed income in retirement. But not only that, even if you don't want to do an annuity, your risk level, odds are, is going to be lower than it was 5 years ago. And you just need to make sure your advisor knows that. Which is why we go through this on an annual basis. We look at your risk tolerance, and we're gonna actually tailor that as you kind of get closer to retirement to make sure your risk level's following what your true risk score is.
Yeah, there you go, and that's huge. Well, Corey, we're out of time. It just flew by today. A great topic, though. We could probably fill a few shows with this topic on what you need to be doing between 50 and 64 to make sure you're ready for retirement. Let our listeners know how they can get a hold of you and set up that complimentary consultation.
Yeah, for our listeners out there, just give us a call at 614-760-0670, or just visit us online at safeharboroh.com to schedule that complimentary, no obligation meeting with us. Our goal is to make sure that you have a great retirement. And the best way to do that is, if you don't have a financial plan, put one in place. It'll keep you on track to make sure that you do have a successful retirement. And if you already have one, there's nothing better than getting a second opinion, a second set of eyes from another advisor, just to make sure that you're going to have the retirement that you want. If anything needs to be tweaked, we're here to help you do that. Again, our job is to work with you as a fiduciary to make sure that you have the best products available for you and the best solutions to make sure that you do have the retirement that you want. So give us a call at 614-760-0670, or visit us online at safeharboroh.com to schedule that complimentary meeting with us.
All right. Thanks for tuning in. That does it for today's episode of Financially Fit Radio.
Join us again soon for another episode of Financially Fit Radio.
Thank you for listening to Financially Fit Radio. Don't pay too much for taxes or retire without a sound income plan. For more information, contact Corey Sickles at Safe Harbor Retirement Group. Call 614-760-0670 or visit their website at financiallyfitoh.com. Corey Sickles and Safe Harbor Retirement Group are not affiliated with or endorsed by the Social Security Administration or any other government agency. All matters discussed during this show are for informational purposes only. Each individual situation may vary, and the opinions expressed here may not apply to everyone. Materials presented are believed to be from reliable sources, and no representations can be made as to its accuracy. All ideas and information should be discussed in detail with one of our qualified representatives prior to implementation.